Salut tout le monde et bienvenue au Balado Podcast avant-match. Mon nom est Joey Alfieri. What's up, everybody? Joey Alfieri with you for the pregame podcast, getting ready for Toronto Argonauts and Montreal Alouettes from Percival Molson Stadium. That goes Thursday. We're recording this Wednesday afternoon around 4 p.m. Just a reminder that this podcast is bilingual. As always, we do start in French. We give you some analysis in French. We don't just repeat the same analysis in English. We give you some different nuggets. So if you are bilingual, you'll understand everything that's going on. And if you can pick up only a few words here and there, you can improve your French along the way. Although don't take any French or English pointers from me because I don't speak any of those languages particularly well. But we've got a big time show lined up for you today. We got Jose Maltos, the kicker, who will join us for a nice little interview that we had after practice on Tuesday. We'll get into his story and how he became a professional football player. It's a great story that you definitely don't want to miss. Donc, on commence en français comme d'habitude. On va avoir une entrevue avec Jose Maltos. Le botteur va se joindre à nous dans une couple de minutes. Mais comme d'habitude, comme j'ai mentionné, on commence en français et on fait un peu d'analyse. Donc, la charte des positions est sortie pour le match de demain, de jeudi, ce matin. Et de ce qu'on peut voir, il y a quelques changements qui vont être effectués par les Alouettes pour ce match-là. Donc, KD Davis, Micah Roan et Anthony Federico vont rentrer, vont être de la formation. Goen Locke, Vereen et Chagnon vont être mis de côté. Évidemment, Chagnon a été blessé lors du match. Même chose pour Goen Locke. Les deux joueurs se retrouvent sur la liste des blessés de 6 matchs. Aussi, Vereen s'en va sur l'équipe d'entraînement, mais aussi, on a perdu David Côté, le botteur. C'est pour ça que Mantos va jouer. On l'a vu la semaine dernière aussi. David Côté s'est blessé pendant l'échauffement. Donc, lui aussi, il est sur la liste des blessés de 6 matchs. Donc, ça complique les choses. Match difficile pour quelques Québécois. C'était quand même bizarre de voir la manière que tout ça s'est déroulé. 4 blessés, mais 5 blessés en fait si tu ajoutes Goen Locke. 4 sur les 5. Les 5 sont des Canadiens, mais 4 sur les 5 sont des Québécois si on considère Marc-Antoine Dequoy et LP Bourassa aussi. Donc, tu sais, quand même un peu compliqué quand tu as 5 Canadiens qui se blessent. Pour remplacer ce monde-là, c'est pas évident, c'est compliqué parce que, tu sais, on sait, c'est pas que c'est facile de trouver des Américains, mais c'est plus facile de trouver des Américains de qualité que des Canadiens de qualité. Donc, on a vu cette semaine avec la blessure à côté, avec la blessure à Chagnon et à Goen Locke, on a signé une coupe de joueurs, donc, dont Anthony Federico, qui est un ancien deuxième choix des Tiger Cats de Hamilton en 2022. Michael Domagala, le botteur, est sur l'équipe d'entraînement aussi. On aime ça avoir euh, un botteur, mais 2 botteurs en fait, un botteur de dégagement et un botteur aussi. On aime avoir des substituts sur l'équipe d'entraînement pour ce qui est des Alouettes. Et c'est important parce que c'est sûr que pendant les pratiques, on veut être en mesure de reposer David Côté et Joseph Zima. C'est pas que eux autres ne participent pas aux pratiques, mais c'est juste que tu veux pas que David Côté fasse chaque bottée de précision. Tu veux pas que Joe Zima fasse chaque bottée de dégagement. Donc, c'est pour ça qu'on a amené Domagala. On a Sam Clark, un autre joueur mondial qui est là depuis le début de l'année pour seconder Zima. Mais Michael Domagala, qui est un ancien des Tiger Cats, lui aussi, un ancien du Rouge et Noir. Et écoute, Domagala a joué, il a botté le ballon lors d'une Coupe Grey. Quand il était avec les Tiger Cats, il s'est rendu là et ils ont affronté les Blue Bombers. Évidemment, les Tiger Cats sont perdus, mais quand même, il y a cette expérience-là. Donc, d'amener une coupe de joueurs, c'est important pour la profondeur canadienne, mais de ce qu'on voit, Federico il est arrivé mardi matin, mardi il a pratiqué, mais jeudi il va jouer. Donc, pas une situation facile. C'est la même chose qu'on a vu un peu il y a une couple de semaines avec Titus Wall, une coupe de pratique, puis là, tout d'un coup, il faut qu'il joue à cause des blessés. C'est ça. Donc, on a quelques changements à la formation et c'est possible qu'il y en ait d'autres parce que euh, il y a une décision qui sera prise sur l'état de santé, sur la disponibilité, en fait, de LP Bourassa, le spécialiste des longues remises, qui a été habillé pour le match, mais qui n'a pas joué en raison d'une blessure. Et évidemment, Marc-Antoine Dequoy, le maraudeur partant, maraudeur étoile qui s'est blessé. On dit c'est une blessure haut du corps, mais on peut dire que j'imagine que c'est épaule. Ouais, c'est ça que ça a l'air. Tu sais, dans le moment qu'on a vu, c'est sûr que ça a été, c'est compliqué de le remplacer dans l'alignement partant parce que c'est pas juste un joueur étoile, mais c'est un joueur étoile canadien. Mais on n'a pas été en mesure de confirmer que ces deux-là n'allaient pas jouer. Ils vont prendre l'échauffement ou tout juste avant l'échauffement. On va voir comment ils se sentent demain. Et le coach et directeur général Jason Moss et Danny Machocha vont prendre une décision ensemble pour déterminer qui va jouer et qui ne jouera pas entre ces deux-là. Donc, si jamais, parce que Dequoy n'a pas pratiqué et Bourassa non plus, mais si Dequoy n'est pas en mesure de jouer, ça va être intéressant de voir combien de personnes qu'on va bouger aux alentours de la défensive, parce que en fin de match, la semaine passée, après que De quoi est sorti, on a vu c'était Najee Murray qui est allé jouer un peu de maraudeur. C'est lui qui a le plus d'expérience dans la tertiaire. Il a quand même assez bien fait en deuxième mi-temps. Les Alouettes ont accordé que 3 points. Mais tu sais, on va voir ce qui se passe. On a vu Bryce Cosby, le secondaire du côté large du terrain, jouer au poste de maraudeur, mais il a pratiqué au poste de maraudeur, je devrais dire, lors de la seule et unique pratique de la semaine. Ça, c'était mardi. Donc, c'est possible que ce soit Cosby aussi si Marc-Antoine Dequoy n'est pas en mesure de jouer le match contre les Argonauts de Toronto. Donc, je pense que sais, je le dis à chaque semaine, et la semaine passée, finalement, j'avais raison, mais tu sais, les matchs dans la Ligue canadienne de football, il n'y en a pas beaucoup qui sont faciles. Moi, je pense que ça va être un match difficile contre les Argonauts de Toronto. Eux aussi, en passant, ils ont des blessés, mais les Alouettes, évidemment, ce qui rend les choses un peu plus difficiles pour Montréal cette semaine, c'est qu'ils ont joué samedi. C'était un match quand même assez physique. Ça a pris chaque seconde de ce match pour gagner ce match-là. Ils ont pris l'avance à 59, après 59 minutes de jeu. C'est sûr que c'est les Alouettes qui ont marqué en premier, mais ils ont tiré de l'arrière pour la majorité de ce match-là. Mais quand même, ça a pris un effort, mais c'est un match assez physique. Ça a cogné assez dur. Et on l'a vu avec les blessures. Donc, pas évident quand tu joues 2 matchs en 5 jours. C'est sûr que les Argonauts, eux autres, ils ont joué jeudi passé. Ils ont perdu contre des Rough Riders de la Saskatchewan. Mais pour Toronto, il a fallu voyager. Il va falloir voyager 2 fois parce qu'on est allé à Regina, ce qui est quand même un voyage assez long. Euh, et il faut voyager à Montréal, ce qui est un voyage quand même relativement facile. Donc, pas compliqué, mais oui, on a eu 7 jours entre les 2 matchs, mais on a voyagé 2 fois, tandis que les Alouettes, c'est 2 matchs en 5 jours, mais on ne voyage pas du tout. C'est 2 matchs à domicile au moins. Ce qui est un peu plus, je ne veux même pas dire facile parce que j'ai un peu honte d'utiliser ce mot-là parce que c'est pas facile du tout de faire ce que ces joueurs-là vont faire jeudi soir, mais c'est un peu moins compliqué quand il faut, tu sais, il n'y a pas besoin de voyager. Tu dors dans ton lit chaque soir ici à Montréal. Donc, ça enlève un peu de l'élément de fatigue de ce côté-là parce que l'an passé, je me souviens, au mois de juillet, on a joué dimanche à Vancouver et on est revenu jouer jeudi, je pense. Ici contre Toronto, on a perdu par un placement, mais tu sais, c'était quand même ça, c'est fou de traverser le pays pour revenir jouer un autre match en 5 jours, c'est compliqué. Ou c'était dimanche à vendredi, si je ne me trompe pas. Donc c'est ça pour la situation avec les blessés. C'est quand même situation qui a affecté le dernier match. C'était tout un match difficile qu'on a arraché tu sais, en tort lors du quatrième quart. Il faut donner du crédit à José Mantos. On va parler à Mantos bientôt, mais c'est toute une histoire, ça, de voir Mantos et on va voir, il va en parler un peu. On a enregistré l'entrevue mardi, mais c'est un gars que il n'a pas joué un vrai match en 11 ans avant que les Alouettes lui ont donné l'opportunité de jouer un match pré-saison l'an passé. C'est un gars que il va l'expliquer, mais de 2014 à 2017, c'était un agent libre. Il a fait une coupe d'années dans la NFL, mais c'était un agent libre pour 3 ans avant d'être signé par les Lions de la Colombie-Britannique. Et après, on a parti le programme mondial dans la Ligue canadienne de football. Il s'est fait repêcher par le Rouge et Noir, mais il n'a jamais joué. Il arrive avec les Alouettes. Il a bien performé lors du camp d'entraînement l'an passé. On se souvient pour Maltos, il a réussi un placement. Il a donné la victoire aux Alouettes avec. Il restait plus de temps au cadran lors d'un match pré-saison à Ottawa. C'est lui qui a gagné le match pour les Alouettes. Donc, tu sais, c'est quand même une belle histoire. Mais tu sais, de voir Maltos, lui, il venait au stade puis il ne s'attendait pas à jouer. Mais là, tout d'un coup, un 45 minutes, une heure et quart avant le botté d'envoi, Côté se blesse. Et là, tout d'un coup, le coach vient de voir puis il dit Hey, il faut que tu joues la rencontre. Et il y avait déjà, il va le mentionner dans l'entrevue, euh, mais tu sais, il a fait ses sprints, son jogging d'avant-match. Il y a certaine routine quand il ne joue pas. Il avait tout fait sa routine, mais là, il embarque sur le terrain et il est 3 en 3 sur les placements. Le point après le toucher, il a réussi aussi les bottées d'envoi. Il y a quand même eu une belle distance sur les bottées d'envoi aussi. Donc, tu sais, c'est une belle histoire de voir Maltos performer. Tu sais, c'est un gars qui vient du Mexique, il est courtier immobilier pendant la saison morte. Et là, ici, tu vis le rêve de jouer du football professionnel dans la Ligue canadienne de football et gagner ta vie de cette façon-là. C'est quand même spécial. Tu sais, on se sent émotif des fois d'avoir cette opportunité-là parce que c'est un gars qui, à plusieurs reprises, a pensé abandonner sur son rêve de jouer au football professionnel. Donc, j'ai beaucoup de respect pour José Maltos et avec David Côté sur la liste des blessés des 6 matchs, c'est sûr que c'est une opportunité en or pour Maltos de se faire valoir. Il a joué encore une fois une coupe de game l'an passé. Il a bien performé. Il a joué à Edmonton, je m'en rappelle. Et en fin d'année, ici, je pense que c'était contre Ottawa en fin d'année, si je ne me trompe pas. Mais, tu sais, pendant que David Côté n'est pas là, tu as une option de qualité en José Maltos, qu'il y a beaucoup d'équipes qui n'ont pas ce genre de profondeur-là. Absolument spécial de le voir jouer. Je pense que la foule, on a vu, tu sais, les vidéos dans le vestiaire après la rencontre. T'as les joueurs qui sont en train de crier José, 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 José. Si vous n'avez pas vu la vidéo, allez voir sur la page Instagram des Alouettes. Écoute, ce gars-là est tellement aimé et ses coéquipiers ont tellement de respect pour lui. Tu sais, puis c'est évident, c'est flagrant quand tu vois la vidéo dans le vestiaire après la rencontre. Donc, c'est une belle opportunité pour Monsieur Jose Maltos. Donc, on va passer en anglais avec cette entrevue-là. So, we're just talking about Jose Maltos and him having to, find out right before the game that David Cote got hurt in the warm-up, and he had to come in and kick the field goals after doing his whole, practice roster routine. But Maltos came in, went 3 for 3, hit his extra point. I thought he got good distance on his kickoffs, but really, I mean, it's a great story. He'll get into it. We'll get into it in this interview that we recorded on Tuesday after practice. I don't want to give away too much because it is a special story. You really want to pay attention to this because this is a story of perseverance. A guy who could have easily quit and given up on his dream, and he didn't. And so I hope that you appreciate this interview with number 72, Jose Matos. But I hope that when he's out there on the field on Thursday night, you give him a nice little round of applause. Don't be too loud because we want to make sure that the field goals get off on time and that everybody can hear the snapper, can hear the holder on field goals. But just respect the job that Jose Matos does and the story that he brings to the table because, like I said, you'll hear it in a second, but he could have quit. He had every reason to quit on his dream of playing professional football, but he did not, and respect to him for that. But this is my interview one-on-one with Alouettes place kicker Jose Maltos. All right, Jose, could you take me through the timeline of when you found out you were going to play? Like, how much before kickoff did you find out? And did you have time to get into your pregame routine? And what is your pregame routine?
No, I think it was probably 45, 50 minutes before the kickoff. So I always try to do extra work in my practice roster workout. So I took my pre-workout, and then I did sprints, I did ladder workout. And then I always help Dave and Joe with the footballs. So I think it was last kickoff warm-up for Dave that he got hurt. I was snapping footballs to Joe Zima. And then he told me, like, hey, take a look, something happened, so maybe you need to be ready. So then I took my look around, and then Coach Byron told me, like, go to be ready, go to stay ready. So that was crazy. I mean, it was a little rush, but it was fun.
I'm curious, like, how did you start in football? Like, how did you get going? How did you first? Do you remember the first time you watched football? Like, how did you get into it?
That was in high school. Playing football in high school. I started in high school in 2007, I think. That was my first season as a rookie. And then, I mean, yeah, I used to play soccer. So they asked me to kick football, and then they took me to the team. So I started my career there. And then I got a scholarship in my college in Monterrey, Mexico. And after that, I went to the NFL.
How big is football in Mexico? If you had to rate it or explain how big of a, obviously we know soccer is the number one sport, but how big is football out there?
It's big, and it's been a while with football in Mexico, and we are, I think, D3 level, like NCAA D3 level. We are at that. So yeah, it's big, it's huge, a lot of fans as well. We close to United States, so coaches back in the years, they went to the States to learn with colleges, so they learn about football in America, and then they brought that that football technique and everything to Mexico, and yeah, it's big.
Were you good right away? Like the soccer technique, did it translate to football right away, or was that a process?
A little process. I started watching YouTube videos of NFL kickers, Adam Vinatieri, Josh Scooby, Nate Keating with San Diego. So I started watching them, trying to simulate their technique and everything. And then I went to the States. My first camp in America was in 2011. First time kicking off the ground as well with Coach Gary Sonner in Arizona. And I did great, I think. And yeah, I mean, that's how I learned about technique.
What was the thing that took you the longest to maybe get down? Like, what was the toughest part about transitioning to football over soccer?
I think it was as I just say, the technique.
Yeah.
That transition in high school, because in high school I was missing extra points from the 10-yard line because I thought it was like a soccer penalty, you know what I mean? I had that mindset. But then I started like learning, working every day, being coachable. And then, yeah, that's how I did.
How long did it take you to feel comfortable kicking a football? Like, how long was the process?
Probably a season, because my college found me after I made a 47-yarder field goal in high school, and that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, often at that level. So they were like, "Who is this guy?" I mean, this high school Prepa 16. Who is Maltos? Who is Jose? And then they found me and they offered me a scholarship. And then I started learning more and putting my work more harder. And that's when I started, like, I believe in me. And yeah.
Could you talk to me about your journey once you got to the United States? Just like, where have you gone? How did you get to the CFL? I know you started in Ottawa, but just take me through where you've been and how long you were at each stop.
I started when SMU offered me a full scholarship, full ride scholarship. And then I couldn't go there because my grades. I was playing professional soccer at the same time as football, so I didn't care about my grades. But that was a mistake of myself. But everything happened for a reason. So head coach at that time in SMU, June Jones, he saw me kicking, so he saw something in me. And then he told me like he will help me to get a shot in the NFL. So in 2013, SMU called me to do my pro day with them to show my skills to the NFL scouts. So I drove all the way from Monterey to Dallas, Texas. I had my pro day.
How far was that?
10 hours drive. So I was locked in actually. And then I crushed it. That was my best workout I ever had. And all the teams wanted to watch me. I got an interview of everybody afterwards. So Miami, Seahawks, Dallas Cowboys, they were the first interested teams. I had a few workouts with them. And then my dream call was from the Patriots as undrafted free agent kicker on Monday. They called me at 6 a.m. in the morning. And the next day, the Saints called me, offering me a 3-year deal with them, like guarantee, signing bonus, OTAs, training camp, preseason. So that was a good shot for me. And then after that, I had a small workout, a private workout with the Patriots because the Saints released me 2 days before my first preseason game. So what happened next? I went with the Patriots, and then 2014 to 2017, no calls, no emails, nothing. But my key was working hard every day, showing up to the gym, showing up to the field. So I never give up, you know what I mean? So I always put in my work, putting everything, what I got at that time. So trusting in God, obviously, trusting in Him, big faith on Him. So then the CFL called me in 2018. Jeff Reinbold, he called me to do another workout in Dallas. Actually, I drove again, 2018, Monterey, Dallas, 10 hours drive, and I had my workout. I compete, and after the workout, they signed me the BC Lions. Yeah. So I started my CFL career in 2018, and then 2019 they signed me again. But I couldn't go there because the global program, so the Ottawa drafted me. And then Ottawa being in the practice roster 4 years, waiting for the opportunity. But then I decided to do some changes. And then I was about to give up, to be honest with you, to throw the towel. But Montreal, thanks God, called me. And then I had my debut. I debuted after 11 years, I think, or 10 years. So being patient, trusting in God, and putting in the work, that was my key.
So you didn't play a game for 11 years?
Yes.
11 years you didn't play a game, and you were off from 2014 to 2017. So you were just back in Mexico, just working out?
Since 2013 until last year.
Wow.
That was my debut. I mean, my professional debut.
Wow.
So I'm grateful with the Montreal Alouettes because they make it happen for me. So, yeah, it's been a while.
So what kind of opportunity do you think? I know you and Dave are very tight. Obviously, Dave's gone down. He's on the 6th game. What opportunity do you think you have, and how excited are you about this opportunity?
I'm excited. I'm excited to help the team, to play for the team, to play for Coach Mas, to play for Byron, to play for the organization. That's the first thing I feel now. And what else? Yeah, I mean, opportunity comes, and it's on me if I want to take it or leave it, you know what I mean? So I'll try to do my best, the best I can do. I think I'm ready. I've been ready since a while, so just waiting for this shot. It's bad for me. I feel bad for Dave because you never wish anything bad to my teammates because we stick together every time. But at the end of the day, I need to help the team. I'm here for that reason. So if they need me, I will show up. and then try to perform the best I can and help the team to win.
I don't want to gloss over something you said before. You were playing professional soccer, so you're an excellent soccer player as well. What's the highest level you played, and where were you playing?
I was growing up. I was in third division, so to get to the first league, like Primera División, you need to follow that process. Third division, second division, and then go with the best soccer teams in Mexico. But I was in that process. I enjoyed it too much. They loved me as well. But I trust in God, so God has a plan for me, and this was the plan. You know what I mean? To have the same goal and earn it, and that was it.
Where are you from in Mexico? Where were you born and raised?
Monterrey, Mexico is northeast, 2 hours from the border, Texas. Yeah.
What's the most famous thing, or what's the thing you miss the most from home? What are you guys most known for out in Monterrey?
I miss obviously my parents and my mom's food. That's the best thing I miss. Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of good, places that serve food, but what is like something that you just can't find here that the food that you miss in Mexico that you can't get here?
I mean, I gotta be honest. I mean, queso, cheese, like good fromage, real tortillas. I think like corn tortillas or flour tortillas. It's hard to find.
The little ones at the grocery store in the plastic bag don't do it for you.
No, no. It's different. Those are good, but still, it's not like that. I'm used to another type of tortilla, so I think that.
Do you cook at all? How good is your cooking 1 to 10? How would you rate yourself?
I got a good hand, yeah.
Oh, really?
I got my mom's taste, you know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah.
What's your go-to dish? If someone was coming over tonight, someone special was coming over, what are you making?
I like to cook good steaks. Okay. Steaks and jalapeno poppers with creamy cheese inside and wrapped with bacon. So I do that, and quesadillas and homemade salsa as well. So to have a good tacos, you know what I mean?
I need to hang out with you a little bit more, I guess.
Let's go. I got you.
Which of the special teams guys, the specialist, is the one guy that you would not have there cooking? Like one guy who you think just can't cook?
Ooh, that's a good question. A tough question.
Maybe. We're throwing somebody under the bus, we'll say. I'm not taking nobody for an answer.
Probably Dave.
You don't think Dave could cook?
Joe Zima, his wife, she's from San Antonio, and she knows good stuff. So I think she's teaching Joe, maybe.
There's nothing wrong with that. Jose, thanks for doing this. All the best, man, and good luck going forward.
Thank you, mi amigo. Appreciate it.
Thanks again to Alouettes kicker Jose Maltos. It was a great opportunity here to get a run of games and get some reps in there. I think that's the most important thing for any player. I know he's in his early 30s, but he doesn't have a ton of experience in games, and so I think getting consistent reps will be important for a guy like Maltos, and I think he'll be better for it. I think he's a great story. On the injury front, we can go over this. Marc-Antoine Dequoy and LP Bourassa are game time decisions. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Dequoy. We know it's 2 games in 5 days. And the biggest thing is there's a bye week coming up. So do you try to scratch and claw at a win when you're really banged up? Or do if he can go, if he tells you, hey, I'm ready to play, I can tolerate the pain, do you put him in there? I don't know. It's really going to depend, on the player. I'm guessing they'll take the warm-up, both guys, Bourassa and Dequoy, but Dequoy in particular. To take the warm-up and we'll see how he feels after the warm-up. But it'll be interesting to see, how the defense changes. Obviously, in the game, it was Najee Murray that took over at safety. We'll see if they put Najee Murray there. Or in practice this week, they repped Bryce Cosby at safety. And I think that's an interesting one because to me, if you move Najee Murray and what the way that I'm not a personnel guy by any stretch, but the way that I try to do these exercises and I try to build the roster and I try to see what the front office people see is, it's either you could move Najee Murray to safety and then you have to move somebody out wide. Maybe you move Bryce Cosby to the defensive back spot where Najee Murray plays, and then Titus Wall comes in and plays the strong side linebacker spot. That's 3 changes that you've made. This way, I think if you just go maybe Cosby, this is probably the logic, I'm assuming. You go Cosby over into Dequoy's spot, if Dequoy can't play. And then Titus Wall will play his natural strong side linebacker spot, and you leave Najee Murray at the field side defensive back spot. That, to me, I think is what kind of makes the most sense. But we'll see what they end up doing if Dequoy can't play. Obviously, if Marc-Antoine Dequoy can play, I prefer to have Marc-Antoine Dequoy out there. It's no disrespect to anybody else, but you're talking about, an East Division All-Star, a CFL All-Star, the most outstanding Canadian in the East Division last year. This is an important player. I mean, this is, there's no getting around it that if he can't go, this is a big loss. But you still have to have confidence in the depth that this team has because they were banged up last week too. And don't forget, this is with Sean Lemon suspended as well. They don't have Sean Lemon at defensive end, but I thought that the group, as much as the Stampeders put 23 points on them in the first half, well, in the second half they gave up a field goal. They gave up a field goal in the third quarter, and that was it. And if you look at it, I mean, they gave up 106 passing yards last week. It's not like they got torched. Jake Mayer's longest completion was for 14 yards. So, it's one of those things where I don't think the defense performed poorly. I think got off to a little bit of a slow start. I think the Calgary Stampeders had a nice game plan to get the ball out wide quickly and play the screen game like Montreal likes to play offensively, but they had the ability to adjust at the second half. And Noel Thorpe and his staff deserve credit for that because it's not an easy situation to be in when you're missing guys, via injury and via suspension, and guys get hurt in game. That's what's a little bit more complicated there. So, yeah, look, we'll see what ends up happening. Obviously, you have to look at it from the ratio perspective as well if Dequoy can't go, because as of right now, the Alouettes have 5 Canadian starters on offense with the 3 offensive linemen and the 2 receivers. And they also have 2 on defense. So that's how you get to 7. They have Wynn, they have Dequoy. And so those 2 guys are excuse me, not Wynn. They have Adeyemi Berglund and Dequoy. Wiggin is the backup. He's a guy who can play defensive tackle. I think if Dequoy can't go, kind of like we saw at the beginning of the year when Dylan Wynn got hurt, Derek Wiggin took a lot of those snaps on the inside when they have 4 defensive linemen out there. And then when they go 3-4, it's easy. It's an easy fix. Wiggin can come out and Jeff Conte-Arcu could come in at linebacker. And so you're covered that way too. So I think that's how you do it. Maybe you want to go with a Canadian running back instead. Maybe you give Antwi or Thomas Erlington the start if you want to go 6 guys on offense, 6 Canadians on offense, 1 on defense if Dequoy can't go. Maybe you play an extra Canadian receiver, so maybe one of the starting Americans comes out, so one of Rambo, Reggie White, or Cole Speaker, and you put in a Shedler Furvius. Maybe that's a possibility as well, but I think to me the thing that makes the most sense is that if Dequoy can't go and you need another Canadian to start, I think you just put in Derek Wiggin at defensive tackle, Dylan Wynn becomes the rotation guy, and then when they have 4 linebackers out there, Conte-Arcu comes in, Wiggin comes off, and that's how you kind of rotate and field your team. I think that's kind of what makes the most sense. As for the Argonauts, they're coming off back-to-back losses. Obviously, Montreal beat them 2 weeks ago. They lost in Saskatchewan last week as well. So they're coming in. They're going to be frustrated. They've got a full week between games, though, in fairness to them. So they've got 7 days, but they did have to travel twice. Montreal playing 2 games in 5 days. Just, we can complain about it all we want. It's just something that everybody has to do at a certain point. It's just the reality of playing in a league with an odd number of teams. So it's just there's no way around that. But it should be a good battle because you look at the way it is right now. Montreal's at 10 points, Ottawa and Toronto are at 4 points. If all of a sudden you put it's 4 points Toronto, 12 points Montreal, a third into the season, that's a kick in the chicklets if you're Toronto. And then if Ottawa loses on the weekend, I think they're in Edmonton. Then it's the same deal for them. You're all of a sudden you're staring an 8-point deficit 6 games into the season. Not easy to overcome. So it'll be a little bit tricky for them. I think that's why, Toronto has to be aware of that. They're going to be without Jake Ceresna, who's one of their, important defensive linemen. So that's a big loss for them. So they've got some injury trouble too. But I do think it's going to be a physical affair. I do think that these 2 teams do not like each other. I know that Montreal, just being at that game in Toronto a couple weeks ago, the Argonauts do a lot of talking. Montreal do their fair share of talking too, but these are 2 teams that do not like each other. So, we'll see what everybody has in store. I know that the Argonauts, like I said, are they're going through a little bit of a difficult run here after winning the first two games of the season. Uh, they've dropped back-to-back games, but looking at what Toronto can do, they definitely have a good team, and they're definitely well coached, and they're going to give Cameron Dukes another opportunity to play quarterback. So we know Dukes does has turned over the ball the last little while, the last couple of weeks, 4 picks last week, but at the same time. He is a guy who's mobile, and that could be tough to stop too. And he can move the ball around. So, it's not going to be an easy task by any stretch. Don't be fooled by the two losses that they have here back to back, because the Argonauts are a good team, and there is talent on this side. So, uh, they've got some weapons. I like Coxie. I like Polk at receiver as well. Obviously we know about Kadeem Carey, the former Stampeder. He's a guy who's been around a long time, who's been productive, was productive the first time these two teams met. So it's going to be a dogfight. And I know I come out here and say that every week, but if Montreal can get this one, and then all of a sudden you get that week off and you get the bye, you go into the bye 6-0, and the loss doesn't have to marinate in your mind. I think you're going to feel that much better for it, because you can get some healthy bodies back. You got to remember, there are guys that have been on the 6-game injured list since the beginning of the season. You're looking at guys like Wesley Sutton is a guy who's been on, and he's probably your most accomplished defensive back right now. He's a two-time East Division All-Star. Jesse Gibbon, some more depth on the offensive line. He could come off the 6 game after the bye week. Arthur Hamlin, the third-round pick, the rookie, a guy who probably would have got to start at safety if he had been healthy for this game. He's back practicing, but he has one more game to serve on the 6-game injured list. He's another guy who is going to get an opportunity to play at some point. Jamar McGlosser, same thing. Don't know if he'll be ready after the bye week because he didn't practice, I think, on Tuesday. But he's a guy who, in theory, could be back. He's missed. This will be the 6th game that he misses. And also Tyrell Richards is getting close. He got injured week 1 against the Blue Bombers, so he has an extra game to serve, but he'll have the bye week to recover some more, and then he'll have to miss the Saskatchewan game on July the 25th. But then he's eligible to come back after that, and he's been doing some work on his own on the sideline. Looks good, doing some jogging. So in the next couple of weeks, you're going to get some guys back. So if you can go into the bye week, and hopefully this game doesn't take as big a chunk of you as it did last week, because last week was tough on the injury front, obviously, with 4 or 5 guys going down, and they're all Canadians. That's the tough part. Replacing Canadians is never easy, but if you can come out of this game relatively healthy, you go into the break with a 6-0 record. You come back, you face a good Saskatchewan team who may or may not have Trevor Harris by that point. We don't know yet. But I think you're feeling pretty good about yourself. So 6-0 looks a heck of a lot better than 5-1. So we'll see if the Alouettes can continue getting the job done on Thursday night at Percival Molson Stadium. It looked like it was going to rain, but it looks like the rain is going to miss us. I know it came down pretty hard on Wednesday, but I think Thursday game time, the rain should miss us based on what I've seen here on my own personal weather apps. So if you don't have tickets to the game, make sure to check out goalsgo.com to get everything that you need out there. Donc, il était supposé pleuvoir pendant le match jeudi. Je pense de ce que, selon mon application Météo Média ici, de ce que je vois, je pense que la pluie va juste nous rater. Donc, pas de pluie pendant le match. Si vous n'avez pas vos billets, visitez goalsgo.com. Achetez vos billets pour, euh, pour donner du support à ces joueurs-là. Ils vont en avoir besoin. C'est 2 matchs en 5 jours, comme on a dit. Et je veux juste souligner quelque chose. Il y a plusieurs joueurs qui l'ont mentionné lors de l'après-match, mon après-match en direct sur le terrain. Le bruit de foule, premièrement, faut pas faire du bruit quand l'attaque est sur le terrain. Donc, quand tu vois un gros jeu en attaque, oui, on peut faire du bruit, mais quand les joueurs sont dans le caucus, ils sont sur la ligne de mêlée, on ne fait pas de bruit, OK? Parce que les joueurs, Cody, il faut qu'ils communiquent le jeu et tout le monde doit entendre. C'est important. Mais quand la défensive était sur le terrain, écoute, c'était bruyant. Et écoute, ça a causé des problèmes à l'attaque des Stampeders. Lors du quatrième quart en particulier, là, c'était pas facile pour l'attaque de communiquer parce que la foule était tellement bruyante et on a besoin de ça encore une fois. Il faut absolument venir supporter ces joueurs-là parce que les soutenir, parce que ces gars-là ont vraiment, écoute, ils font du gros travail, ils mettent leur corps, tu sais, âme dans le football tu sais, oui, pour gagner notre vie, mais pour leur vie, mais pour représenter la ville de Montréal et la province du Québec. Tu sais, la province de Québec, tu sais, c'est vraiment des gars qui ont beaucoup de respect pour les partisans et pour la communauté québécoise. Donc, et vous pouvez avoir un impact dans le football, on peut avoir un impact dans le match. Donc, absolument, il faut faire du bruit quand la défensive est sur le terrain, pas quand l'attaque est sur le terrain, mais quand la défensive est sur le terrain. Faites du bruit, achetez vos billets, goalsgo.com. Bon match. La semaine prochaine, on prend une semaine de congé, nous autres aussi. Donc, il n'y aura pas de balado la semaine prochaine, mais on revient la semaine d'après pour un aperçu du match contre les Rough Riders de la Saskatchewan. Vous pouvez acheter vos billets dès maintenant pour cette rencontre-là. C'est goalsgo.com pour tout ce que vous avez besoin côté billets. Merci, bon match et bonne fin de semaine. Bonne semaine de congé aussi. Et n'oubliez pas qu'on a un après-match en direct sur le terrain, en vidéo sur toutes nos plateformes, YouTube, Twitter, X, Facebook. Même Instagram, on est rendu dans les stories Instagram. Vous êtes plus de 1500 personnes à nous écouter en direct. C'est des chiffres énormes, mais on veut continuer à améliorer ces chiffres-là. Donc, merci beaucoup tout le monde. Si vous n'êtes pas en mesure d'écouter en direct, vous pouvez l'écouter en reprise sur YouTube, sur Facebook aussi et sur Twitter. Donc, merci pour le support tout le monde, c'est apprécié. Bon match et on se retrouve au stade.